performing on a contract, how often should you be communicating with the contracting officer and the Corps throughout performance?
Okay, so first off, let's be clear. There is a difference between the contracting officer and the Corps. The Corps is the contracting officer's representative, represents contracting, and contracting actually more or less kind of sits behind the desk and deals with the formalities of the contract. Okay, so the question is, how often should you be communicating with each? With the contracting officer, typically you don't really need to communicate with them too much, but it is important to communicate with them if there are any issues with the contract, any changes, any questions about interpretation throughout the performance, or anything that you see like coming up as something that need to be addressed, perhaps the execution of an option period. Maybe you're finishing out your base period and you want to make sure they're going to award it to you again, right? And execute on that option year that's coming up. You want to jump on that a couple months in advance to get the ball rolling, because it does take a bit of time and you don't want them to have to backtrack on things. So when there's kind of issues, situations, or just occurrences that are coming up on the timeline, that's when you want to communicate with contracting and you want to be intentional about it. With the contracting officer's representative, they're the ones boots on ground kind of working alongside your team. And those folks you honestly want to be communicating with on a more structured and more frequent basis. I like to say on a weekly basis, we provide a weekly report of the work that was done, on site or the multiple sites, whatever you have going on, and to provide that to the Corps. If you want, you could CC contracting, but they may be, annoyed with it, or they may just not care because they've got other stuff that they're working on. But the Corps is going to kind of like be the babysitter, the boss on ground, even though they're not the boss. But weekly, for some instances, bi-weekly or monthly may be appropriate. But I think what's important here is that it's frequent and it's consistent and it's structured. That way they know when they can expect to hear from you and get updates on the contract. And you'll certainly be hearing from them if they have any questions or anything that's going on as well. So you also want to make sure that you are responsive to kind of any inbound communications from the Corps or contracting. That could happen at any time, quite honestly.
What should you do if you are asked by the government to do something that's not in writing?
Very important. Do not do anything that is not in writing. This is important for a number of reasons. Number one, say the contracting officer, not the Corps, but the officer asks you to do something, but it's over a phone call or it's, in a meeting. You need to get it in writing because they could change hands. There is a huge amount of turnover and, more importantly, just transitioning in positions. And 1 week, 1 month, this person is your contracting officer, and the next month it's this person. And all that this new person has to go off of is, once again, what's in writing. So you have to protect yourself by saying, yes, if you're in agreement to do the thing, just make sure that there is something written in email in terms of a clarifying statement, or if there's a change or a modification to the contract, make sure that is gone through the proper channels through a contract modification. Now, also, if there is something that they're wanting you to do that's going to cost money, or perhaps something the Corps is asking you to do, but the contracting officer doesn't know about it. Okay, these things can be expensive mistakes, expensive learning lessons. So I'm trying to save you from having to learn those by taking my taking my experience for it now here in this video. So for example, if the Corps says do it like this, I know that it's supposed to be done like this. Well, if you do it and there's a problem, contracting is the one who's going to have to address the problem. And if they know nothing about it, they're going to blame you, even if the Corps told you to do it. So make sure you get it in writing. Also, if somebody says, oh yeah, do this and we'll reimburse you, just send us an extra invoice, but you don't get it in writing, I've seen it happen too many times, even my students and myself, where you take that and then you do it. And then, like I said before, that either that person changes or there's amnesia, or the Corps said okay, but the contracting officer says no, and then you don't get reimbursed those funds, and that comes out of your profit. So just a few really realistic examples that you very much could occur and experience throughout your contract performance, ways that you need to protect yourself by getting it in writing, or you don't do it until you have it.
As a government contractor, how can you protect yourself from unforeseen expenses like changes in oil price or macroeconomic factors caused by economic instability or war.
Okay, so this isn't like you priced wrong, guys. You missed a comma, you missed a decimal point. Okay, that's not what this is for. Throughout contract performance, as things change, as the world changes, as the economy changes, as politics changes, these factors, absolutely, these macro and microeconomic factors can put pressure in different ways on the performance in your contract. Okay, and if this is causing you undue hardship as a small business due to unforeseen circumstances that there's no way you could have planned or priced for, you want to request an equitable adjustment. Okay, take notes, write this down. It's called an REA. It's a request for equitable adjustment, and you're going to submit it to the contracting officer, and you're going to request this adjustment be made. And what you need to do is paint the picture, essentially. Write your case for the difference between what you priced versus what is currently happening, and spell out the conditions that have occurred that were unforeseeable that is causing this hardship to your small business. Okay, that will put the contracting officer in a position to either deny or approve your request for adjustment. But if what you're saying is truly out of your hands and truly was unforeseen, then that should be approved, and that should be a way for you to be able to be made whole again. Not additional profit, okay? To just be made whole again. So once again, you don't have that undue hardship due to those macro or microeconomic factors.
Is there anything you can do if you do not get paid in time by the government?
So the government's supposed to pay their bills in 30 days of receiving them. Okay, generally speaking, there's lots of sort of situations that may not apply to that, or there can be delays caused. But the government's supposed to pay their bills within 30 days. There's something called the Prompt Payment Act that came out around 50 some odd years ago that says if the government does not pay their bills within 30 days, they are going to be charged an interest rate. So although you can't force the hand per se, and like I said, there's a number of situations that I'm referring to that could occur during contract performance and your management of the project, but just know if there is delay and you are not paid within 30 days, that is where the Prompt Payment Act is supposed to come into effect. And the interest rate is something to the tune of 4% and some change in 2026 in terms of a penalty fee that they should also have to additionally reimburse you. So there's nothing you can do, like I said, to force the hand, but there is a way for you to get some additional retribution, if you will, in terms of penalty late payments. And you can look it up yourself, check out the Prompt Payment Act. It'll pull right up in your search engine.
Is the contracting officer going to be boots on ground monitoring your project performance?
Okay, we kind of touched on this, but still super important. Contracting officer, typically behind the desk. The contracting officer representative, typically boots on ground. So no, you're not likely going to see a contracting officer monitoring, speaking to your team. It could happen. A rare few times I've seen the contracting officer not have a core, so they kind of picked up the slack and did both roles, but it was very, very like hands-off, low touch point type performance and delivery. So not something you should expect. It would once again be the core that you would expect to see boots on ground.
Do you need to invoice the government on your company letterhead to get paid?
Okay, so when you go to invoice your government for your project, more or less the government, it's not about your company letterhead and sending that over to the government, right? There's typically going to be a portal that they're using that you're going to have to get set up in when you have the contract award coming. They'll have those setup instructions. And if it's a DoD contract, more than likely you're going to be going through Pi, and through Pi, you're going to invoice through a software portal called WAF, Wide Area Workflow. And that's something that you can see within, once again, the DoD agencies. Now, if you're outside the DoD, there's also a very common portal through the Department of Treasury. So instead of the DoD, of the DOT, and that's IPP. With the DOT, they're not going to use WAF. They're more than likely going to use something called IPP, the Invoice Processing Platform. And just like getting set up in WAF, you're going to get set up in IPP and submit your invoices through there. And it'll be pages and fields that you fill out and amounts based on the different pricing CLINs where there's buckets of money, right, already assigned to the contract. So it's not going to be like putting your invoice on a company letterhead, unless maybe it's a very small project or some sort of project that's not going through these two primary platforms. But 95% of the time, I dare say, you're going to be either going through WAF with the DoD or through IPP with non-DoD agencies. Now, guys, none of this matters if you can't actually win the contract. And how do you win the contract? You learn how to write competitive and compliant proposals, right? And so that's why more than ever, even in today, with all the AI software platforms that are out there, it's important to understand how to write winning proposals. That's why I created GovRFP. GovRFP is my proposal writing system that I've used with my students for a number of years. And over the past year, I've really expended so much effort to dial that in to make it truly step-by-step. So essentially, if you need a government proposal, get GovRFP. I've set the first 3 modules absolutely to free. You only need an email address. You don't need a credit card. You can try it out for yourself. And even those of you who are experienced writing government proposals in the past, like I said, it is clearly a top-notch training, and it is recommended for beginners, but also intermediate levels, okay? And you can get that at GovKidMethod.com, kind of my gift to you, unlocking those free modules for sticking around, plugging this here at the end of the video if you are still watching. So again, GovKidMethod.com, just click GovRFP, unlock those free modules. And for today, guys, if you have any questions around contracts management, or if there's something that I said that I touched on that you didn't think of that is helpful, give me that feedback. I always check comments, and I truly want to know. And until next time, guys, smash the like button for the algorithm. We are one of the fastest growing YouTube channels for federal government contracting. So join the community, subscribe to the channel. You don't want to miss future trainings. And until next time, guys, we will go ahead and see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.